So my second question, a little more serious. How do you feel about this episode's treatment of women? Yes, I'm going there.
Hard-hitting question.
Yeah. I'm going to start with the women. Constance, go ahead.
It was rough. I think it showed us that women in this world have little to no agency over their lives. Even a queen is subject to the whims of a king. You know, he didn't even stop and think about her. They said that they only gave her enough milk of the poppy so that they didn't damage the child, and you could tell that she was in pain that whole time, and it was not a pretty scene. And even with the queen that never was, she had her birthright taken away from her simply because she was a woman. You know, she seemed to be qualified, educated, everything that would have made a good ruler based off everything we've seen of her, everything we know of her, but she wasn't a guy, so she got passed over. And I think that that's going to be a theme, especially considering the nature of the story at hand. I won't go into spoilers, but I think that a woman's choice is very important to the characters in this world, and we're going to see the reflection of their choices in regards to the men around them. How do they take agency back into their own lives? How do they take their destiny into their own hands? Which is something that even as today as women, there are lots of men that are trying to make decisions for us. And it's how can we take back our own power?
Especially regarding birthing rights. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, and that is something that the showrunners have said that they wanted to try to draw an analog to, is that the women today are losing that right to decide for themselves. And I'm getting a little teared up because it is an emotional issue. But I think that hopefully we can see these women taking back control of their lives and making choices for themselves and dealing with the men that don't want them to make those choices for themselves, hopefully in violent ways. That would be nice. But I'm going to kick it to you, Uzma. What's your thought on this?
I completely agree with you. I just don't get why people have so many problems. I see a lot of people saying they are going woke. Like, why do this is a medieval series, and why if they are trying to give show that women can gain power, I don't see why there is so many issues and resistance to it. Like, why so many people are against it, and you can see the treatment in Game of Thrones was kind of similar to this. If you look at every single woman we have seen in the first episode, Queen Rhaenys, she wasn't given her, even though she had a really good claim and she was the daughter of the eldest son, she wasn't chosen. The majority of the lords gathered at the Great Council voted for Viserys just because he was a male. And if you look at Alicent, even her own father sent her to King Viserys, just so he could gain power. When we look at Rhaenyra, she had been by her father's side for so long, but he was only focused on getting Balon, and it was only after he ran out of all options, when he couldn't even choose Daemon anymore, that only then he turned to Rhaenyra. It wasn't like he suddenly became a feminist and yay to women, power to the females. No, he had no option. That's why he chose Rhaenyra. It wasn't by his first choice. And same with Queen Aemma Arryn. We all saw what happened there. And it was really sad. So, no, I don't see a problem if they are trying to make amends, or like if they are trying to show that it can be improved, the women's treatment can be improved. What about you, Sam?
Well, I mean, in Game of Thrones, we saw women have it pretty hard, but House of the Dragon, we're going to see it a lot worse. I think like one of the other brutal parts of this episode was when Emma was talking to Viserys before the birth and saying how she was like, this is the last time I can do this, and even apologizing to him and then having everything on top of that was just as worse, you know? Like, it's like, what the fuck is she apologizing for, you know? Like, I'm sorry I couldn't give you an heir, and then for him to do what he did. And, you know, the rest of the episode was like, you know, Viserys like came off as like a sympathetic character. Well, not sympathetic to us, but to everybody around him, and everyone was like feeling bad for him. And I think that made me hate him even more as the episode went on. Was like all these people like, you need to be there for him, like you need to care for him. Him getting mad at the council, and it's like, you kind of did that, man. So like it was like that whole scene was like, you know, incredibly uncomfortable, and it should make us feel uncomfortable, and it was like extremely hard, and it makes me hate Viserys, and I don't think I'll be liking him anytime soon. Solar, what about you?
So the question is, how do we feel about the treatment of the women in the show thus far? Am I correct about that?
Yes.
Like, could you repeat the question? Okay, cool. So with that, I'm going to say, I look at the treatment of women on screen, and I see indicative. I see everything that this whole thing has been talking about, building up, showing. And in truth, I have to applaud the writing when it comes to how horribly the women are treated, not just in the visceral ways. The birth scene and the fact that, you know, Viserys didn't even ask her and let her make peace with what was about to happen. That was like, well, way to at least, you know, way to let her know that she has no personhood. Because it's one thing if he made the choice to save the baby instead of her and any of that stuff, but he didn't even tell her that it was going to happen. You know, it was just, I love you. Now sit there and scream. And I'm just kind of going, dude. And I thought in that scene, it very much showed the intrinsic and systemic ways that oppression can take root in a society. Okay. The internalized lessening or non-personhood when Emma was talking to Rhaenyra saying, we've got royal wombs, our battlefield is in the birth bed. And it was like, yeah, it's good to know that you want to do these things, but this is your job. And, you know, just the so many layers that come in with the internalizing of that kind of tradition and that kind of culture was depicted very well. For those of us who see that stuff and who see parallels of that stuff in a lot of subjects, it's sickening. I think the thing that really pushed it over the top for me was a very subtle thing that happened. That it's, I'm not even going to say blink and you'll miss it, because these kinds of things are so internalized. And it was the fact that when the Baratheon knight mentioned the queen that never was, and Otto was like, you know, you could have his tongue cut out for that. And Viserys was like, tongues don't, you know, let them wag their tongue. It doesn't mess up with the air. But Daemon naming the kid heir for a day got him exiled. So tell the truth about the woman in a snarky manner, and it's like, okay, that's fine. Tell the truth about the dead baby boy in a truthful manner and get exiled. That says a lot about what women mean, you know? And yeah, honestly, it's sickening. It is truly, truly sickening, and my God, do I love it. Primarily because it's good to see these things on screen so people have a context for when complaints are made, for when there's a lot of stuff in media that talk about how poorly people who are othered are treated, but they never, it's very rare that a show will show what othering looks like. And this episode did it on at least 3 different levels on 6 different occasions. You know, from Otto essentially saying, all right, well, the king is sad, so you go cheer him up and take the lube with you and wear your mom's dress. To, what did you say about my dead baby boy? Well, what about what they said about your cousin? Shut up. I don't care about her. Yeah, that was my dead baby boy. Get out of the kingdom. You know, even down to the fact that, the other women that were in the scene, specifically Queen Emma, everything that came out of her mouth came from a place of not willful, but compliant subjugation. You know, from the first time we see her on screen, when Rhaenyra comes to see her in the 3rd scene, to her death. It was very much in the old world. This is what women accepted, and it showed that, and it showed how ugly that could be. So it brought up, you know, I was feeling a certain kind of way, and I love that I was, because I got to see what the problem was within context in a very visceral manner in so many different ways, be it conversation or a special effects team that better at least get a mention at the Emmys or get a mention at the Special Effects Union's annual dinner. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
It really says a lot when the only woman who we didn't get to see getting a bad treatment was a whore.
Right?
Like Damon, when he was exiled, he took Miss Arya with him.
Yeah.
What do you think, Constance?
I'd have to agree.
That
That was the only honest relationship with a woman that anybody had in the entire series so far. I mean, for one episode.
No, except for Alicent and Rhaenyra.
Right.
Yeah.
The women can respect each other, apparently. At least when there's not a power dynamic between them where one is directly in control of the other.
Yeah.
Morgan, what's your take on this whole situation?
What do you think,
okay.
Morgan?
First, I have to say that I couldn't watch the birthing scene. Like, it was there, it was on the screen. I literally put my hands in front of my eyes. I could not look at it. But I listened to it. It was very, very powerful. I hated every moment that I saw the women treated how they were treated. I noticed every little backhanded way that they were disregarded or discarded. I absolutely want the representation of that in the show. I want it there. But gods was it hard to watch. So yeah, I can accept it because I know that it's there for a purpose. It's there not only to show that bad shit happens, but that we have somewhere to go from here, and hopefully it's up. At least a little bit up. Even if we aren't going to break the glass ceiling or whatever, we can go up from here. And they set the bar real low for where to go up from. But that's the sad reality of the situation that we're watching. And yeah, it was painful. But it does need to be there. I do think I regret it. There was scenes I wanted to watch. The battle going on at the tourney that was flipping back and forth between the birth scene and that. Because I couldn't look, I missed a good chunk of that. So I will say
chunks about the tourney.
Yeah. So I will say I understand their intention, making it look like, yes, in this case, the bedroom is a battlefield. In the after episode interview, they talked about how they wanted it to look like a battlefield. And I do want to point out that, yes, it looked like a battlefield, but it was not a battlefield. That was not a battle with two sides fighting. That was a massacre.